I thought I found the perfect partner until she demanded I fire the woman who helped me build everything. What started as jealousy turned into obsession, and then harassment. I almost lost my business, my peace, and someone I trusted like family. But when I uncovered the truth, I had to make the hardest decision of my life. She gave me an ultimatum. I gave her the door. You won't believe how far she went to tear my world apart. Watch to the end. I built my company from nothing. 10 years ago, I was living in a cramped apartment above a pizza shop, freelancing SEO gigs for $50 a pop. Now, I run a boutique digital marketing firm with 18 employees, a skyline view office downtown, and a client list that includes 2 Fortune 500 companies. I'm not saying this to brag, just to explain that my work is my life. I put blood into this place. And I couldn't have done it without Maya. Maya's been with me for 5 years. She started as an intern who organized the chaos I didn't even realize I was drowning in. She's meticulous, sharp, impossible to shake under pressure. There are weeks when I don't remember what day it is, but Maya always knows where I need to be, who I need to call, and when I last ate. If I'm the engine, she's the oil. We've never crossed any lines. She's professional to the bone. I met Emily at a friend's birthday dinner. She was sitting across the table from me, debating the ethics of true crime podcasts over tequila. Smart, bold, and funny in a way that didn't feel performative. She taught high school English and had this endearing habit of correcting my grammar mid-sentence. We started dating, slowly at first. Her world was so different from mine, parent-teacher conferences and lesson plans versus client decks and ad spend metrics, but it felt refreshing. Grounding. After 8 months, I asked her to move in. We were both in our 30s, no games, no nonsense. She said yes. At first, everything felt right. We cooked together. She made fun of my color-coded calendar. I brought her flowers for her classroom. We talked about taking a trip to Greece next summer. Then one day, Emily asked if she could swing by my office to drop off lunch. I was in back-to-back meetings, but I texted Maya to let her know Emily would be coming up. I thought nothing of it. When I walked out of the conference room, Emily was already there. Maya had let her in, offered her coffee, and they were chatting, or trying to. Emily's smile was tight. Her eyes scanned Maya like she was reading a resume. I kissed her cheek, thanked her for the food, and walked her back to the elevator. That evening, Emily was quiet. At first, I chalked it up to a long day. But then, as we sat on the couch watching a documentary, she dropped her first grenade. So, she said without looking at me, "Do all your assistants look like Victoria's Secret models, or is Maya a special case?" I blinked. What? She shrugged. Just curious. She seems comfortable around you. I laughed it off, told her Maya was just insanely good at her job. She was practically my work brain. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, she made a comment about Maya's perfume trail. That night, she asked why I always texted her back so fast. Do you do that for Maya, too? It started like a slow leak. Drip, drip, drip. Small things. Little jabs. I told myself it was insecurity. That she'd get used to Maya's role once she saw there was nothing going on. But Emily wasn't settling down. She was just getting started. The week after Emily visited my office, something in our relationship shifted. It was subtle, at first, comments that felt more like veiled jabs than genuine curiosity. You sure spend a lot of time with Maya. Does she work weekends too, or just sleep over? I'd laugh nervously and brush it off, but it stuck with me. Emily started dropping by the office unannounced. She'd bring me lunch, or forget something at home and swing by just to say hi. Each time, she'd make a point to linger by Maya's desk, staring at her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Maya kept it professional, of course. But I could tell it made her uncomfortable. Then came the questions. What does Maya actually do for you? Does she have to travel with you for client meetings? Do you two text this much when I'm not looking? She'd pick up my phone while I was in the shower. One time, I caught her scrolling through my messages at 2 a.m. I asked what she was doing. She said, just couldn't sleep. You left your screen unlocked. I confronted her. Told her I felt like she didn't trust me. That Maya was off limits for suspicion. She'd been with me long before we met, and she was like family. Emily stared at me for a moment, then asked, if she's like family, why is she so pretty? I didn't have an answer for that. I didn't think beauty disqualified someone from being trustworthy. One night, after a quiet dinner, she finally said it. I don't feel comfortable with her in your life. I think you need to let her go. I choked on my water. You want me to fire Maya? I want you to prioritize us, she said calmly. She's a threat to our relationship. No woman respects boundaries like that unless she's trying to blur them. I tried to explain Maya had never crossed a line. She was loyal. Professional. I told Emily how Maya once covered for me for 3 days while I was stuck in jury duty, handling 3 clients and keeping the office running without a single hiccup. She was invaluable. Emily's jaw clenched. Then maybe I'm the problem. She stood up and left the room. I followed her. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. You know I love you, she said. But if you can't even consider how this looks to me, how close you are with a woman who spends more time with you than I do, then maybe I need to think about what kind of future we're building. It felt like a trap. Either I gave in and lost one of the most important people in my professional life, or I stood firm and risked my relationship. I told her I wasn't going to fire someone who had done nothing wrong. I'm not asking you to punish her, Emily said, voice rising. I'm asking you to protect us. That's when I suggested therapy. A couples counselor. Someone to help us navigate this. She scoffed. Oh, so now I'm crazy? You're choosing her over me. That's all I needed to know. She stormed out. I sat alone in the silence, stunned. What just happened? Was I blind to something? Or was this something else entirely? I didn't realize then how far Emily was already willing to go. For a while, things calmed down, or so I thought. Emily stopped bringing up Maya. No more snide comments, no more accusations. She even apologized one night over dinner, saying she realized she might have been projecting. That her last boyfriend cheated on her with a coworker, and it had messed with her head. I appreciated the honesty. I told her we could work through it. That she didn't have to worry. But Maya didn't seem convinced. One morning, she stepped into my office, closing the door behind her. Her hands were shaking slightly. I don't know if I should even bring this up, she said, but your girlfriend keeps showing up. I blinked. What do you mean? She's been at the office 3 times this week. Doesn't say much. Just lurks. Watches me. Asks weird questions. My stomach turned. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't want to cause drama, she said. But it's starting to affect my focus. I don't feel safe. That word, safe, hit me in the chest. Maya had always been composed, unflappable. Now, she looked like she was on the verge of tears. I promised her I'd handle it. That night, I confronted Emily. She didn't deny it. I wanted to see for myself, she said. You've built this little world that I'm not a part of. You treat her like your partner. She is my partner, I snapped. In business. That's her job. That doesn't make her my girlfriend. You defend her more than you defend me. I realized we were having the same argument on repeat. I told her I couldn't have this conversation anymore, that I needed boundaries respected, both mine and Maya's. Emily said nothing. Just stared at me, eyes flat. Then she went to bed without another word. The next day, Maya looked even more shaken. I need to show you something, she said, sliding her phone across my desk. It was a string of Instagram DMs from an anonymous account. The messages were brutal. I know what you're doing, slut. You think being close to him gives you power? You'll lose everything. He doesn't love you. He's just using you. My blood went cold. Do you have any idea who this is? I asked, already knowing the answer. Maya shrugged, eyes glassy. It started 2 days ago. I ignored them at first. Then they started referencing things no one else would know. Client names. Our travel calendar. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Then I grabbed my phone and texted my home security provider. I'd had cameras in my office at home for years, mostly to keep an eye on deliveries and the cleaning service. But they also logged device activity. When I pulled up the access logs, it was all there. Emily had been logging into my work accounts. Late at night. On weekends. She'd gone through my emails. My texts. My Dropbox. I felt sick. This wasn't insecurity. This was obsession. I looked up at Maya, her face pale and tight. I'm so sorry, I whispered. She just nodded. I can't work like this. I'm scared she's going to show up and... I don't know. I didn't blame her. I'd brought this chaos into her world. That night, as Emily sat on the couch scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened, I realized I had a choice to make. And I already knew what I needed to do. I stayed up most of that night, staring at the ceiling while Emily slept beside me like it was any other night. I kept replaying Maya's face, shaken, violated. I kept seeing those messages. The venom behind the words. And I kept hearing Emily's voice, just days earlier, calmly saying, I just want to protect what we have. What we had wasn't love. It was control. The next morning, I didn't go into the office. I called Maya and told her to take the day off, too paid, of course. I needed time. Space to figure out how to clean this mess up without dragging her further into it. I took a long drive and ended up at the same cafe where I'd first met Emily. Funny how a place can change in your mind. What once felt like the beginning of something good now felt like the scene of a crime I hadn't recognized as one. By the time I got home, I'd made my decision. I walked into the living room. Emily was on the couch, half watching a show, legs tucked under a blanket. She looked up, smiled. I didn't smile back. We need to talk. Her face dropped a little, but she didn't look surprised. I told her I knew everything. The fake account. The DMs to Maya. The unauthorized access to my emails. I laid it all out, calmly, methodically, like I was talking to a client who'd breached a contract. She didn't deny a single thing. Instead, she said, I had to do something. You wouldn't listen. You were so blind to her manipulation. I stared at her, stunned. You think Maya was manipulating me? She was wrapping herself around your life. Don't you see it? She was making herself indispensable so you wouldn't notice what she was really doing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's the only person in this entire situation who's been loyal, I said. You're the one who went behind my back. You're the one who harassed her. She was a threat to us, Emily said again, voice rising. Everything I did was to save what we had. I shook my head. You didn't save anything. You torched it. That was the last real conversation we had. I asked her to pack her things and leave. She screamed. Cried. Through every emotional manipulation she had left at me, how could you do this to me? After everything we've built? Are you really choosing her? But this wasn't a love triangle. This wasn't a choice between two women. This was about right and wrong. About professional boundaries. About respect. And Emily had crossed every line. Once she was out, I changed the locks. I blocked her on every platform. I reached out to a lawyer and my company's HR consultant to document everything, just in case she tried to retaliate. Maya gave a written statement, which I filed with internal records. I offered her extra security coverage and time off, but she declined. She said, if I let her scare me out of the job I love, then she wins. She was stronger than I gave her credit for. But I wasn't done yet. Emily had gone after someone who had never done anything to her. She'd put her paranoia above someone else's safety. I wasn't going to let that slide. I filed a formal police report for digital harassment. I didn't know what would come of it, but it was the first time in this entire mess that I felt like I was finally standing on solid ground. I'd made a lot of sacrifices to build the life I had. I wasn't about to let someone tear it all down just because they couldn't handle their own insecurities. The next few days were quiet, but tense. Emily was gone. Her things, her scent, even the framed photos she'd hung without asking, they all vanished like a bad dream clearing by morning. But the wreckage she left behind was very real. Maya returned to work, but the light in her eyes wasn't the same. She still did her job flawlessly, like always, but I could see the shift. She hesitated before knocking. She glanced over her shoulder more than usual. She kept her phone on silent, face down. I felt responsible. I called her into my office one afternoon and told her, again, how sorry I was. Not just for what Emily did, but for not seeing it sooner. For not protecting her from it. Maya looked at me for a long time, then said, "You didn't know me protection, but you gave it anyway." That's more than most would have done. Still, I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to make sure nothing like this ever happened again. I had our legal team draft a formal incident report and added a clause to Maya's contract for legal support and harassment protection. I installed additional security in the building, keycard updates, front desk guest screening, and two-step identity confirmations for all incoming messages to staff. Privately, I updated my own home office network security. Changed all passwords. Installed biometric locks on my devices. It felt a little extreme, but after what I'd seen, I wasn't taking any more chances. Then came the last message. It was a burner email. Untraceable. The subject line was empty. The body was one sentence: "She'll ruin you too, eventually." I stared at it for 10 seconds, then deleted it. I didn't show it to Maya. There was no point. Emily was spiraling, clinging to a version of the story where she was the victim, not the aggressor. And I wasn't going to keep feeding that fantasy. I forwarded the email to my attorney and let it go. By the end of the week, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. My relationship with Emily had chipped away at my peace, my focus, my instincts. I'd let guilt convince me I was doing something wrong when all I was doing was maintaining professional respect. Maya wasn't the problem. She never had been. Emily was the storm, and I'd finally stepped out from under it. On Friday, Maya stayed late to help prep a deck for a major pitch. When we wrapped, I offered to walk her to her car. She hesitated for a second, then nodded. As we stepped into the elevator, she turned to me and said, "You know, for what it's worth. I never thought you chose her over me." I swallowed. I didn't think I had to choose. You didn't. But it still means something that you didn't flinch when it mattered. We stood there in silence for a moment. Not romantic. Not dramatic. Just two people who'd been through something unfair and walked out of it on the same side. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like things might actually be okay again. The fallout from Emily's exit was quieter than I expected, but the aftershocks rippled through my life for weeks. I kept expecting drama, phone calls in the middle of the night, social media rants, visits to my office, but she stayed silent. Maybe it was the legal warning from my attorney, maybe she was embarrassed, or maybe she was too busy rewriting the narrative for her friends. I didn't care anymore. For the first time in a year, my apartment felt like mine again. The heavy air lifted. I could breathe. At work, things took time to normalize. Maya kept her distance for a while, not from her duties, but emotionally. She was polite, efficient, but her laughter was more reserved. The other staff sensed something happened, but no one asked questions. Our HR director scheduled a meeting with me, and I laid everything out: every message, every incident, every step I'd taken to protect Maya and the company. We documented everything and quietly updated our harassment policies. I sent a confidential memo to the team, framing it as a proactive measure for staff well-being. If I'm honest, I worried about Maya. I worried the damage was permanent, that she'd never trust her work environment again. She was too good at her job, and I couldn't afford to lose her, not just for business but for the balance and sanity she brought to my life. Then, 2 weeks after everything exploded, Maya called me into my own office. She handed me a mug of coffee, my favorite, just the way I like it. She closed the door and looked me in the eye. "I want to stay," she said simply. "But you need to know, if anything like this happens again, I'm out. I can't go through that twice." I nodded. "You'll never have to. I promise." She gave a small, tired smile, and I finally saw the edge of her old self coming back. Business picked up, almost like the universe was rewarding us for weathering the storm. We landed a new client, a brand we'd been chasing for years. Maya was a rock, running operations, fielding clients, steering the ship while I focused on strategy and vision. I started sleeping again. Eating better. The knots in my stomach loosened. I called my parents, made time for old friends, got back to the gym. It was a slow return to normal, but every day felt like a small victory. One night, after a successful campaign launch, the whole team went out for drinks. Maya stayed a little later than usual. On her way out, she paused by my table. "You know," she said, "we're a damn good team." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how close I'd come to losing all of this. Not just the business, but the trust, the peace, the life I'd worked so hard for. "Yeah," I said, smiling for real this time. "We are." Looking back, it's strange how something so destructive can quietly shape everything that comes after. Life settled into a new rhythm. Maya and I never talked about Emily again, not really. The closest we came was a mutual, unspoken agreement to keep things professional, to guard what we'd rebuilt together. That unbreakable trust wasn't just business, it was survival. Emily tried reaching out once, a few months later. A single email, vague and apologetic, hinting at misunderstandings and needing closure. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The lock on my door and the firewall on my inbox were more than just security, they were boundaries I finally respected for myself. Work flourished. That big client we'd landed? It opened doors to more opportunities. My team grew 2 new hires, more projects, better energy. The office felt different now, lighter, safer, more focused. I watched Maya take on more leadership, mentoring new staff, running meetings with confidence I'd always seen in her but that she now owned. I realized I'd come dangerously close to losing everything I'd built because I doubted my own instincts, let guilt cloud my judgment, and tried to fix someone else's broken trust with my own peace. There's no partnership worth that. Not in business, not in love. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself wondering if there was something I could have done differently. Could I have seen the signs sooner? Should I have set firmer boundaries from the start? But that's the poison of these kinds of relationships, they make you question your own reality, turn loyalty into a liability. The truth is, Maya and I survived because we stood our ground. We did what was right, even when it was hard. I protected her because she deserved it. She stayed because I finally showed her she could trust me to have her back, no matter what. Now, when I walk into my office each morning, there's a quiet satisfaction. Not just in the numbers on a spreadsheet, but in the faces of my team, in the knowledge that we're strong, steady, and safe. Maya's laughter is back, echoing down the hallways, reminding me how easily it could have all been lost. What Emily tried to destroy ended up making us stronger. Sometimes I look at Maya, head down, lost in her work, and am grateful not just for her loyalty, but for the reminder that real trust is built, tested, and, if you're lucky, earned all over again. I built my business from nothing. I almost let it be torn apart by someone who didn't understand what it meant to truly trust. Never again.